A very good morning, actually, good afternoon to everybody. I thank CSR Foundation for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of such an august gathering. And the tone has been set by the inaugural speakers, especially the Mr. Aminab Kant, about the hydrogen green hydrogen economy which we are trying to establish. So my topic for my presentation is how do we unlock this hydrogen economy of India. Next please. So there is a big hype about hydrogen globally, and what does it mean for India? So hydrogen is one element which has multiple opportunities for utilization across the sectors as mentioned by Mr. Amitabh Kant and earlier speakers. So we can produce hydrogen by couple of methods. Of course, hydrogen is the most abundantly available material in the universe. At a cosmos level, it is more than 99.9% of the material in the universe is hydrogen. Actually, all the stars are basically fueled by hydrogen. But when we are looking at our small world on the earth, we are looking at producing hydrogen for our own purpose, and we can produce it through renewable resources like wind, solar or biomass or hydro, by primarily using the electricity generated by hydro, wind or solar and electrolysis of water. We can also directly generate hydrogen through various biomass or biofuel bioprocesses, biotechnology processes, and the hydrogen has a variety of applications. As you can see, it can be used as a storage material to store this energy, renewable energy, and as mentioned by earlier speaker, we can use renewables not when it is available, but we can use it when we want by storing it through hydrogen. We can use hydrogen as a fuel for transport sector, replacing petroleum or diesel. We can also use it for industrial processes like steel or cement making, both as chemical and as a fuel. In chemical, for say in steel production, the reduction process where carbon is used, it can be replaced by hydrogen, and we can also use hydrogen or ammonia made from green hydrogen as a fuel for long distance, particularly for shipping or airliners, etc. Now if you really look at little bit of history of hydrogen, in 2000 around, there was big hype for hydrogen, hydrogen fuel cells and hydrogen for transport, for vehicles, etc. But because of particularly because of the high cost of technology and the high cost of material used in hydrogen fuel cell technology, and electrolysis technology, this hype little bit died down by 2000 in late 2000, and now again there is a new emergence of hydrogen economy, primarily driven by the net zero targets, where one is seriously looking at replacing all the fossil fuel with green fuels. And typically the green fuel, that is the solar, wind or hydro, which have a main problem of variability and availability at a limited availability. So that is why you need something for storage, either it is electric storage through batteries or flywheel and other technologies, or through hydrogen. and that is where Government of India is also seriously looking at hydrogen as one of the new drivers for economy, and so we need to focus on this. Next, please. Now, if you really look at the timeline for our program, for the Government of India program, in 2006 we had a hydrogen mission launched by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and this was basically had some targets of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and utilization, but nothing much happened, except there were some R&D projects initiated by the ministry and also Department of Science and Technology in hydrogen related areas, and these are mostly handled by the CSR labs and IITs. In 2016 there was another committee established to review this the whole mission, which came out with the recommendations. In 2020 we had another program, and in 2021 the Honorable Prime Minister announced the hydrogen mission on 15th of August, and then also subsequently it was announced in the budget, and some budget was also provided for hydrogen mission to MNRE. And of course, going forward now we have the National Hydrogen Mission. A part of it is announced recently, a couple of days back, where the power sector has announced major concessions for electrolyzers industry or hydrogen production industry in terms of waiver of transmission and electricity charges for 25 years. That's a long period commitment by the government, and that's a major commitment, I will say, for all plants which will come up online by 2025. So that's a major this thing. The second major target which is announced by the government is to set up the hydrogen manufacturing facilities. There are also a couple of discussions about making green hydrogen targets for industries, particularly the hard to abate industries, or industries like fertilizers, or the refineries and steel and other industries which can use either hydrogen or ammonia, green ammonia, as their products or as their raw materials, where certain percentage of green hydrogen is to be used. Just to give the background, the grey hydrogen is something which is produced by the steam reformation of natural gas, and in the process natural gas, which is CH4, gets converted into carbon dioxide and hydrogen, and that carbon dioxide emissions add to the greenhouse gas emissions. So that is why it is called as a green hydrogen. And if you capture that and that carbon dioxide emissions, capture it, store it and utilize it, so carbon capture, storage and utilization, CCUS technology is integrated with that, then that hydrogen is called as a blue hydrogen. And green hydrogen is the one which is produced directly by the solar or by the renewable or clean energy technologies. Government has announced these targets, and we are now looking forward to a lot of initiatives which have taken. I will give a brief details about that also. Next, please. As I mentioned earlier, we have Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, which is primarily responsible for all the new energy initiatives, including hydrogen, and Department of Science and Technology, which is responsible for the research and development in all the areas of science and technology, including renewable energy and hydrogen. And also there are other institutions like IITs, CSR labs, private sector labs, public and private sector companies which are already working in either developing technology, adopting technology, or developing projects and applications for both the green hydrogen and ammonia. Next, please. Now, as a precursor to this, TERI as a research and think tank organization always tries to work ahead of time. And a couple of years back, we did a research on what will be the market for green hydrogen in coming years. And this analysis is based on our research, which we carried out for Energy Transition Commission, UK. And currently, demand is about 6.9 million metric tons, which is basically from refinery and fertilizer sector, and little bit from chloralkali or chemical sector. And we expect that this will go by almost fivefold to 28 million metric tons by 2050, where there will be new areas, new sectors will be added which will consume hydrogen, which primarily include industries like steel, cement, fertilizers, refineries, and also part of it will go into transport sector. Where particularly one is looking at long distance transport, where electric vehicles are not fully equipped to handle the requirements of the sector, like long distance trucking, shipping, particularly inland waterway shipping. For example, state of Kerala is working on concept for cargo shipping and passenger boats running on solar or fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell driven technologies. So basically this is something which we did analysis of the demand in the past and in the future, and it's based on our analysis. Next please. We also expect that by 2030 and beyond, the cost of hydrogen production from renewable is expected to fall by more than 50%, and will start to compete with hydrogen from fossil fuel. And a couple of projections of hydrogen cost based on conventional grid electricity, off-grid solar, natural gas and coal are a range is shown, and this is in rupees per kg. So it's around in the cheapest one is around 100 rupees a kg, which is from steam reforming of natural gas or coal. But if we are really looking at the off-grid large-scale solar energy, where hydrogen is directly produced from solar energy at site, then the cost can also come competitive. If we are using grid electricity, as you all know, grid electricity has its own challenges of transmission, distribution, losses, etc. So, and the cost of electricity is quite high, and it is supplied through grid. And so that's why the projections show that the cost of hydrogen will be quite high. But some of the some of the incentives which are offered in the recent policies may bring down these projections a little at a lower side. Next please. So as we have said that the hydrogen demand could at least multiply threefold by 2050, and it is likely to be driven by the industrial demand, particularly in the sector. And if government pursues the policy of making green hydrogen use mandatory, something like renewable purchase obligations for electricity sector, same way if similar obligations come for the green industries which can utilize hydrogen, so then the demand can still go much more than this. Additionally to this, as the government has announced plan to make it an hub for export of hydrogen to other countries, so that means there will be additional demand which can be created through exports of hydrogen, and that makes the demand projections much more than this. And next please. So in industry, steel and ammonia industry will drive the growth of hydrogen demand, followed by refineries and methanol industry. And this is something which our study shows in terms of capex, opex and fuel cost. The different options for hydrogen generation, including solar and other options. So I am not getting into the numbers in details. I'll share the presentation with you, so you can have this. But the projections are that the cost will come down when you are using solar, which is already very cheap compared to the new conventional power plants, and that will drive the market. Next, please. So some analysis we did for fuel cell electric vehicles and battery electric vehicles, and we found that currently there is no business case for fuel cell electric vehicles, particularly in smaller segments like 4-wheelers or 3-wheeler or 2-wheelers, and it's only it will only grow in future when we have hydrogen at a much cheaper cost compared to the electric vehicles. The only sector in transport where hydrogen fuel cell vehicles can become competitive is basically long distance travel like trucking, where you need supply of power or supply of electricity for a longer duration continuously without charging. And that's where battery storage has a limited limitations, and where hydrogen can take over. Next, please. So this is where we can see by 2050 the total cost of operation for trucks in hydrogen fuel cell vehicles will be lower than that for other kind of vehicles, gas or petroleum vehicles, and that's when this will become viable technology. Next, please. In power sector, we see that currently direct we have large scale solar power plants or large scale wind power plants. They are supplying power directly to the grid, and now we have of course the concept of round the clock service, where we are looking at battery storage integrated with the solar or wind power plants. But battery storage or pump hydro storage systems, which are currently being implemented in couple of projects, they are still cheaper than hydrogen, in terms of because hydrogen has additional cost of storage and handling and transportation. So we see that use of hydrogen for power sector will only be possible for long-term seasonal storage, where you have a huge amount of storage. So the cost per kg of hydrogen comes down because of economies of scale. And also during the seasonal storage, for example, during monsoon, solar is not available, so you have this stored hydrogen supplying solar power through hydrogen. And those kind of applications can come in picture only during after 2040 or that time frame when the hydrogen becomes cost competitive. So these are our early projections. Of course, the way technologies are changing, the way costs are coming down, the way scaling up is happening, and the way the private industry is taking interest, this may happen little earlier, and we hope that it will happen little earlier than 40. So that hydrogen becomes viable technology for power sector per se, as storage or renewable energy conversion systems earlier than 2035 or so. Next, please. So this is the basically summary of hydrogen deployment in various sectors, and where you can have direct, the as I mentioned, the sectors like two-wheelers or four-wheelers, where direct hydrogen utilization is currently not a viable idea as a business venture, but on long distance it may become viable for long distance, and also for other applications like industries. Next please. So what will be the benefit of domestically produced hydrogen? It can reduce, we currently import about 30%, 38% of our energy. 30% of it is coal, and 85% of it oil, and more than 50% of its oil we are importing, and that domestically produced hydrogen can reduce those percentages, and depends on the scale at which we can operate and develop the domestic hydrogen industry. The exploiting green hydrogen production potential for domestic renewables can significantly reduce this import bill, and by 2050, under an ambitious green hydrogen scenario, we estimate that cost of imports could be reduced by around $20 billion each year, by replacing it with the hydrogen technologies. And that is why the government of India is also looking at hydrogen technologies, particularly electrolyzer technology or fuel cell technologies. Electrolyzer is the equipment which is used to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, and for which it uses the renewable energy or electricity. And now the electrolyzer manufacturing technology is something which we do not have sufficiently developed in India, although there are a couple of electrolyzer technologies developed by ISRO and CSR and others. But on a commercial scale, internationally, these technologies are scaled up substantially, and we are now, the government has planned to make electrolyzers in India under Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat schemes, and it is also been discussed that the PLI, the production link incentives, which are there for other sectors like solar PV or battery, for example, can be extended, these schemes can be extended to electrolyzer production, and we hope that the government will soon come with the policy for that also, and that will create a major market for electrolyzer industry to to produce electrolyzers in India, and there will be huge demand for electrolyzers in India if we pursue the path of green hydrogen. Next please. So what should we do to step up manufacture for hydrogen and fuel cell technologies? So one is, of course, we have lot of research activities, and there are a lot of research programs which Government of India through Department of Science and Technology is running, and we need to take them to the logical conclusion of commercialization as mentioned by the Technology Development Board. But they are looking at technology readiness level, TRL level of 6 or 7, where they start funding, and so that is something which one has to look. The private industry, particularly industries in steel sector like JSW or Tata Steel and others, so they are looking at converting their steel production by making green steel, because that is something as mentioned in the earlier lectures also, that Europe will come out with border trade barriers for for facilitating green steel, and so those companies should also have to have some head start. And of course, some of these companies are already looking at different technologies, they are experimenting with some pilot projects, etc. but it is an a big opportunity for us, and so we have to leverage our research expertise and make scalable technologies which can be commercialized fast by the private sector or public sector for that matter, because a lot of public sector companies are already active in hydrogen sector, particularly oil companies. Next please. So what we need to do is a cross-sectoral coordination between the various ministries, because right now we have oil sector ministries under Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. We have power sector under Power Ministry of Power, Ministry of New and Renewable Resources, Ministry of Department of Science and Technology. So all that has to come out with a very cohesive way of working, so that we work towards a common goal, and we also need to look at more international collaborations. At TERI, we are working with 3-4 countries now. We are working with the Netherlands, where we are looking at business to business development for hydrogen and fuel cell sector. We are working with the Japanese NEDO and Ministry of Japanese Ministry MITI, and we are working on hydrogen fuel cell technology coming from Japan. We are working with couple of other countries where we are looking at business to business development. So there is a lot of interest shown by many countries, especially European countries, to bring their technology in India, and that is something we should leverage. Government should also focus on shifting the R&D to commercialization. Create market through policies, mandates and standards, which government is already doing it. Standards is another area where which is very important, because hydrogen is a very explosive material, and proper handling of hydrogen with standard recommended standards and safety precautions is an important aspect, especially when it is coming to sectors like transport, where common public is exposed to. In industrial sector, there are already standards for handling hydrogen or storing hydrogen, but when one is looking at hydrogen as a commodity which will be handled by common public, that is an important aspect of safety which should not be forgotten. We have to prioritize and target industrial activity, especially in the beginning. It can be a clustered approach. We have steel clusters, we have chemical and fertilizer industry clusters, and thanks. So we need to look at all those aspects, and we also have to optimize deployment of hydrogen from system-wide perspective, so that the cost of deployment comes down. Next please. Couple of slides. Yeah. So some of the initiatives I have tried to summarize them by different public sector and private sector organizations. Especially IOCL is working hard on innovative way of using biomass gasification process developed by Indian Institute of Sciences to develop the hydrogen production facility, and they are also working on demonstration projects like hydrogen filling stations, or for local transport, bus transports, etc. NTPC is also looking at, particularly in Ladakh, Leh Ladakh, there is an ambitious plan for completely making Leh Ladakh as a carbon neutral territory, and that's where NTPC is looking at fuel cell based microgrids and other applications for green hydrogen and green methanol production in their one of the facilities for green hydromethanol or green ammonia production, etc. BHL has been working on fuel cell technology for quite some time, and they have their own fuel cell technology. Plus, they are looking at a hydrogen project developer role, where they will design and implement the hydrogen related projects, be it storing, transportation, or manufacturing of hydrogen as a EPC contractor. And then, as you know, Reliance and Adani have ambitious plan for setting up manufacturing facility across the value chain from solar to hydrogen, so on and so forth. So next, please. At TERI, we have been active in hydrogen research earlier, in late 90s and 2000. So we have established hydrogen fuel cell plant using, of course, imported hydrogen fuel cell technology for gas produced through sewerage process. Next, please. Next, yeah. So this is integrated system where we are generating biogas and which is coupled with the hydrogen fuel cell, and this was a demonstration project with US technology, but fuel processor was developed by TERI. Next, please. But as I mentioned earlier, the commercialization of this kind of technologies was not possible during that period. Next, please. We have been working on fuel cell development, and some components where some small scale single cell fuel cell components were developed earlier, but because of the funding and other issues, we have to stop this kind of basic materials research development in fuel cell. Next, please. Currently, of course, we are working with the ministry on policy development. We are also working on some plan for production of hydrogen from renewables. We are working on potential assessment for a couple of Japanese and other clients. We are also currently doing hydrogen production through biotechnology route, where we are looking at hydrogen production through algal route and other biotechnology routes, and this is something which our biotechnology team is doing. Next, please. And as I mentioned, we have in 2000 we came out with a report on make hydrogen in India, and then in December, again 2000 December, we came out 2020 sorry, we came out with a report of hydrogen utilization in steel industry and other industries. So these reports are available in public domain on our website. I will stop here, and thanks for your time and listening me patiently, and thank you very much. If you have any questions, I am ready to take it later. Thank you.